Happy New Year, everyone. It is the first day of 2017, and what a great new beginning. Today I'm out in the bush celebrating the new year, and I just wanted to tell you a bit about where I am. So I'm at the site where a forest fire occurred back in 2012. So in this site, over 100 acres of fire burnt a beautiful old cedar swamp down. The cause of the fire was determined to either be a careless toss of a cigarette butt or a piece of glass left over by someone, like a bottle or something like that, that sparked the fire. As you can see around me, what's left are trees, basically just the skeletons of the trees. All the cedar leaves have burnt away. So here behind me, you guys can see the marsh that was affected by the fire. As the cedar swamp was burning, the fire went underground and actually came up through the root mass system of the marsh. So actually you can see on a lot of the trees here that the stumps are actually burnt halfway up. So incredible. You'd think normally this would be a bit of a fire break, which it is. However, fire did go underground and burnt some of the trees. You can see off in the distance there on the horizon that the trees there are not as affected, as this was somewhat of a fire break. But very, very interesting. I never would have thought a fire, could do that, but it burned hot enough and it was such a dry summer that it did. Here's a picture that I took back in October of 2012 after the fire, and you can see that much more clearly where the fire had destroyed some of the trees. Like every other part of the forest, this area has regenerated. So you can see the cattails have come up again, and there's also, some willow that's come up as well. So it's been a little over 4 years since this fire occurred. It occurred in the summer of 2012, and it was an extremely dry summer, and that led to conditions that were just ripe for a fire to start. The fire burned really strongly for a couple of weeks. It took a lot of firefighters on ground, as well as helicopters dropping water in order to get the fire under control. One of the methods they used to get the fire under control was to install these sort of fire breaks, which look like roads through the forest. And that basically helps slow down the spread of the fire from treetop to treetop and sort of laterally. So now you can see there's a lot of regenerative growth in this area. These areas are also helpful for wildlife to kind of traverse through the forest, but also creates a bit more edge effect, and some species that are susceptible to that edge effect, it can be detrimental to them. So for example, some birds that would sort of nest on the forest edge, birds like cowbirds could come in and parasitize the nest by laying eggs, in those nests, like in a thrush nest, for example, and then the thrush would be forced to raise the baby cowbirds and push out the baby thrushes from the nest. So edge effect can be good, increasing mobility for animals from fragment to fragment of the forest, but it can also be bad for some animals that are more sensitive to those effects. In October 2012, I came out here and took some pictures as I wanted to sort of show everyone what can happen to a fire and the regeneration process that occurs after the forest fire. So one of the first things I noticed when I came out here were a lot of trees. They were quite unstable at the time because they had basically all their leaves were gone. Fire had gone up the trunks of the trees, burnt out the root system, so they were it was very sketchy to be out here. The trees could fall down at any time, and a few of them did actually since the fire. Several, as you can see behind me, are still remaining standing, but they could still fall, if there's a really heavy windstorm, because they're not as sturdy as a healthy tree would be. These trees are all dead, and they provide wonderful food for woodpeckers and things like that, because bugs start to infest the dead wood and get into the bark and under the bark, and the woodpeckers begin to peck that away to have a meal. One thing I noticed when we first came out here were the abundance of woodpeckers. Several species actually had come in. So downy woodpeckers, hairy woodpeckers, and a really beautiful woodpecker that I'd never seen before. It's called the three-toed blackback woodpecker. And so it was going up and down the trees, harvesting some insects there. Usually those are one of the first woodpeckers that kind of come in because they will start to eat some of the bugs that have infested the dead trees. Also, some really big pileated woodpeckers came in as well. There's been a lot of woody regeneration in this area, but when I first came out in October of 2012, all the fire had destroyed all of the plants that you see in the understory. So back then, everything was burned straight to the bare rock. We are on shield out here, so there's a lot of bare rock underneath, and there was different mosses and fungi and things like that, and small woodland plants. They were all destroyed in the fire. In October though, by then, some seeds had carried in on the wind or transported by wildlife, and they started to regenerate. I collected a herbarium of the different plants that I found originally at the site here back in October. As you can see, there are many different plants. Some of the trees that had roots that sprouted again, like the basswood, ferns, and other green plants began to flourish. Also, you could see lots of different fungi that had started to fruit again to form the network for the understory. Unfortunately, a lot of animals also perished in the fire. When I was exploring, I found a lot of bones, from rodents, also from, deer as well. So there's some jaw bones and things like that. So some animals were just not able to escape the fire in time. I also started seeing some animal tracks of things moving back through the area. Saw some snakes, saw, deer moving through here again, coyotes. I surprised a fox actually when I came back to take a look at the area. Surprisingly, I also think I saw bobcat tracks as well in here, so that's pretty neat. I can't confirm 100%, but they certainly looked like it. And certainly coming back in the winter of 2012-2013, you could start to see other animals, because their tracks are more evident, like the mice and things like that. Also caught a beautiful blue jay flying through here as well. And with the growth of new plants, the pollinators start coming through again. Saw some beetles, some bees, things like that. So that's really, really helpful in helping to regenerate the forest. In the first stage of succession after a forest fire, you're going to get a lot of green plants and eventually some woody plants as well. And as they grow and flourish, creating more nutrients for the understory, they'll die, their nutrients go back to the soil, and seeds will come in from other trees, for example, sometimes aspen, poplar, things like that, and they will start to grow up as well, birch. And then as those trees, they kind of come up and grow quickly, they die. That sort of leads, for a more mature forest containing things, like maples and stuff like that. It will take up to 20 years possibly to regenerate this forest again. It's been a fascinating process seeing it develop right before my eyes over the last 4 years. The fire also uncovered an old farm dump site, so I was able to get some very beautiful pictures of, just some old rusted out trash in the woods actually. So, metal cans and bottles. I mean, who knows if things like that, the sun going through them actually sparked the fire, or whether it was a careless cigarette butt. But some beautiful things found in the woods, also barbed wire and things like that. So this must have also had a farm that backed onto this area way back when. It got all covered over by greenery and you couldn't see it, but after the fire became extremely evident. So today, what we can see here is a lot of regeneration of some woody plants as well as some non-woody plants. This here is a good example of mullein. Also have some little trees starting to come up as well, which is good news. And this here is staghorn sumac. So this plant right here. Staghorn sumac makes a wonderful tea. Now just remember, you've got the right sumac. It is a staghorn sumac, not the poisonous sumac that we're talking about. But there's some beautiful red flower heads that can be used to make what I call the lemonade of the bush. Very nice lemony citrus flavor. Some people drink it cold, some people drink it warm as tea. And the beautiful red berries at the top are what you would use to make your drink. So as always with any wild edible, you want to be absolutely sure of what you're identifying. So make sure you have at least 2 resources to help you identify things in the field. Like I said, with the staghorn sumac, there is a poisonous lookalike, and you definitely do not want to mix those two up. And here are some ferns as well. They're still doing quite well in this area. And here is a beautiful thistle plant as well. So taking you, through this forest on a little tour of what happened after the fire, it just sort of makes me reflect on, last year and what's coming up for 2017. Even if 2016 was not the best year for you and everything didn't go as planned, kind of like analogous to this forest fire, maybe you had a really, really bad year. But onward and upward. 2017 is a brand new year, lots of promise. Think about sort of the changes you want to see in your life and how to go about achieving them. And just like the forest, the regeneration, the changes you want to see, they aren't going to happen overnight. Here we are 4 years in and we're just starting to get some new growth and development, and things are starting to stabilize. So that should give you guys all hope that this year is a new beginning, and to think of some goals for next year and work over time to achieve them. You could have some setbacks, but that shouldn't get you down. Things can always be positive if you see the brighter side of things. So on that note, guys, I hope you have a wonderful 2017 and all the best. Onward and upward. And I have lots of exciting things planned for the channel this year, and I hope you'll join me on the adventure. Have a great week as always. Take care.